620 Live, that we may all speak boldly. We wish you a very Merry Christmas. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Revelation chapter 1, verse 3. Apocalyptic is the Greek word for revelation, which means to uncover or unveil a message. When you reveal something, you show it, you uncover it, you let it be known. It doesn't always mean that you're going to tell everything about it or that it's going to be 100% and fully clear, but you still have let some of it be known. I have done a study of Revelation, which I posted on, Facebook, daily, going over, verse by verse, and, some posts there was like 2 or 3 verses, just depending. But the holy route that this message took came from God to an angel and then to John. Again, that holy route was God to an angel and then to John. John physically wrote this book, and he wrote it while that he was a political prisoner, exiled to the island of Patmos by the Roman Emperor Domitian. And he was exiled there, or sentenced there, whichever way you want to look at it, between AD 92 and AD 96. Domitian, the Roman emperor of the time, his reign ended around 96 AD. He actually reigned from September the 14th, 81 AD to let's see here. He reigned from 14 September 81 to 18 September of 96. And the Roman Emperor Domitian did quite a bit for the Roman citizens. He strengthened the economy by revaluing the coinage that the Romans used. And he also strengthened the borders of Rome, of the Roman Empire, and he also initiated a massive rebuilding program to fix the damaged parts of the city. Specifically the city of Rome. Domitian, though, imprisoned John on the island because John was preaching about Christ, the gospel of Christ, that Christ saves, and which you would not think was a imprisonable offense. However, it does seem like it's getting closer and closer to that today. Domitian was the emperor, and back then the emperors wanted the citizens of Rome and their empire to worship them. Emperor worship. During that time, the organizations were ordered to support the state, in a way, worship the emperor of the day. In a real turnabout here, the Romans believed that the Christians were indeed and actually atheists. The reason that they felt this way is because the Romans believed in, their gods. the Greek forms of their gods would have been like Zeus, but the Romans had their own names for them. And the Christians did not believe in the Roman gods. Some of the names of the actual Roman gods were Jupiter, who was a protector of the state, Mars, who was the god of war, Juno, who was the protector of women, and Mercury, who was the god of trade and also messenger to and of the gods. Many citizens during this time would blame Christians for things that would happen, for, bad things that would happen, which, of course they're not going to give the Christians credit when good things happen, although we know that all things come, from God. But they were quick to blame Christians when something bad would happen. And they would say it was because the Christians were not worshiping the local Roman gods of, the area. The Roman citizens actually even go as far, and this was quite commonplace for them to pray for the Roman emperor. And as Christians, we know that we are to pray for leadership, but, ultimately our leader is, Jesus is God. And yes, we are supposed to pray for the leadership of our country, of our, those that are in government, that they do the right thing, but we're not to put them to a godhead or a god to elevate them beyond what their actual status is. Thank you for checking out 620 Life Podcast. We ask that you please like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. Be sure to tell everybody about us. I know sometimes it can be really hard to pray for someone whose beliefs don't align with yours, or someone in leadership that is not doing the right thing and not following a good Christian example. But as I said in the last episode, we need to pray for our leaders, whether we agree with all that they say, which is highly unlikely. If we agree with part of what they say, which is, more likely, or whether we disagree with them totally. Regardless of our opinions of them, God loves them. Whether they believe in Jesus Christ or not, God still loves them. And they are the leaders that we have, the governmental leaders that we have. We still put God way above them, and that's who we are to ultimately follow, and to follow Him until, He brings us to be with Him for all of eternity. Now, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 14 tells us the following: where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. We need to pray for them, one, for their souls, that they will get saved, but two, we also need to pray for them that they will make the right decisions and to follow God's lead in the decisions that they do make. Again, I can understand where someone may come from, like it's hard to pray for them. I have gone through that as well, as it's hard to pray for someone that you don't agree with, and then it's like, on the other hand, it should be really easy to pray for them because, we want we want them to be on the same page, but ultimately what we need to pray for is God's will and for God to give us the strength whenever our will does not match His will. Because of the two, His will is much more important than ours could ever be. We also need to look at 1 Peter 2:17, which says, "Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king." Now, the king in this regard does not mean Jesus, although it can mean Jesus because he is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. But whenever I read this in this particular context, the king, as they had back in those days, the king would be the leader, and here the president is the quote unquote king. Now, there's lots of things that this president, as of this recording, has done that I particularly do not agree with, but it's not just him. I could go through lots of people in the government that I don't agree with, and it's not just because this is the president of the time that I don't agree with. I could go back to each of the previous presidents before now that I have, followed and researched. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like digging deep into all kinds of aspects of their policies and beliefs, but each of them, does things that I just particularly do not agree with. And but what we need to remember is that we need to pray for them because they are the leader of this country. And they are there because God has allowed them to be there. If they were not to be in office, then they would not be in office. And it's really simple to say that we need to pray for them to accept God's guidance. And it should be really simple to do in action, but a lot of times we let our feelings or our own bias or our own, for lack of a better term, condemnations color how we act, how, we talk. But, like I'm getting to here, I think we also allow it to color our prayer life. And I know if I was asked for everybody to raise their hand that, we've allowed our own personal feelings to color how we pray or to, lead us to pray. I know I would have to raise my hand guilty that I have allowed it to happen as well. Is it something that I'm proud of? Is it something that you should be proud of? No, it's not. But it still does happen because we are human. Um, you know, Getting back to the leadership, they are the ones that, we answer to on a, what's the word, a judicial kind of level. And, um, which leads into this that the persecution really starts at the bottom and works its way up. We see this a lot even in today's world because normal citizens will begin to get their feelings hurt, their feathers ruffled, their tie tied a bit too tight. Whatever way that you want to say it, it usually starts at the bottom, such as a famous person getting, upset over something and making a scandal out of it. It's sad to say that, so many people in the limelight tend to use that for the wrong. to get their own personal agenda across, as opposed to actually doing good with it. While they may believe that they're doing good, they're usually really not. Am I saying that that they always do bad? No, they don't, because there's some out there that do a lot of good, that stand up for what they believe in and what is right. Now, usually whenever it came to the Roman Empire, the Roman Emperor would not act until citizens would bring charges against other citizens. And this is why I say that this is where the persecution of the Christians really started, was at the bottom, where the citizens would bring charges against other Christians, for not worshiping, for not praying to the emperor, and other things like that. And according to a commentary that I read, John Wesley is actually quoted as saying that, "Oh, little how we know about this book," speaking of the book of Revelation, not Revelations, but only one Revelation. He said, "How little do we know, or how little we know about this book, or at least how little I know." And that's not an exact quote there, but it's basically saying that it seems like for everything that we do know about this book, or that we think we know, there's probably 10 other things that we don't know. I'm not saying that exactly 10. It could be one other thing that we don't know. It could be 100, or we could be way off course and in a total wrong direction of things that we know or think that we do. Adam Clarke, who is a British biblical scholar and was also a 3-time head of the Wesleyan Methodist Conference, said that he could not produce anything satisfactory about this book, so he just, really didn't even try. Both of these men tried to explain the book of Revelation literally. They ascribed the leper that is mentioned in Revelation 13, 1 through 10 as the Roman Catholic Church. And something that we need to take into account whenever we're talking about the book of Revelation is that John was writing this book to the people of that time. Things that we would know, they would not understand. And, he was explaining to them the things that he saw in terms and in phrases and in symbols that they would understand more easily than, what we could understand. Something else that we need to know and to take into account is that the things that happen in Revelation should not be tied to that time period of John. It is a futuristic event that's going to take place, even as of this recording, in the future, because it has not taken place yet. We try to ascribe things to it that, a lot of times are not there. And we want to try to make them fit. We're trying to put the square block in the round circle. It's not going to go. It's not going to fit. And, an example of this is the city of Babylon. While there was a physical city, a literal city called Babylon, it often refers to any large city that is full of idolatry and is the center of power for a government, or for a place, or a world, or civilization. And the leper from Revelation 13, 1 through 10 is any leader that persecutes the church. Domitian, quote unquote, could fit that role. And in John's day, Domitian did fit that role.